there, and welcome to Grimwit with Dimwits. I'm Blondie.
And I'm T.
And this is that special month that T loves that she even renamed all by herself, so I will let her take it away.
You just refuse to say the word, don't you?
I refuse. That's why I made it all fancy-like. I did my Vanna hands and everything.
Like you're helping a sister out, but you're just being lazy.
No, it's not lazy. It's denial.
Welcome, everybody, to Oxbookterfest.
Wow. Okay.
You're not cheating me out of this month. It's happening every week for the whole month. Get used to it.
After so many years, there's just so many things I block. I'm in block mode.
Well, I know you, and maybe you need to unblock a few things because not a lot going on in there, sister.
Like my refusal to get out and walk every morning. Block that too.
Oh, and I'm sure that's my fault.
I'm sure it is too. You've hindered me in some fashion. So this is also the time of the month where we'd like to give a shout out, or two shout outs actually. The first one being to the country of South Korea. Yay!
Woohoo! I love that we have listeners in South Korea.
I do too.
And we also want to give a shout out to our listeners in Naples, Florida.
Florida is like all over it. I'm pleased with that.
They love us, and Florida's, known to be a little different. So I see why they love us, because we're different too.
We are. And speaking of Florida, I do feel very bad about all the hurricanes. I hope everyone's safe.
I do too. 2 back-to-back hurricanes is just way too much. So we are definitely sending some love and prayers out to Florida.
I have an update, by the way.
Okay.
With the Scott Peterson case. Remember the Los Angeles Innocence Project took it over in January?
Yes.
And they've had multiple court appearances trying to reopen the case. And just recently, the judge ruled that the defense can access decades-old evidence that was left undisclosed during Peterson's trial. The defense is pretty much looking for any argument that Peterson's trial was irregular or improperly conducted. So my thought on this is they're not saying that he's innocent. They're saying they want to show that his trial was irregular, which that I don't know what it is, or improperly conducted. Not that he's innocent.
So I'm going to just point out the obvious. Why are people spending so much time, money, and effort on somebody who they can't even claim to be innocent? So They're pretty much just saying, it's not the point that he's a murderer. It's the point that the murderer didn't get a fair trial.
Mm-hmm. And I think the undisclosed evidence that wasn't disclosed to begin with, that's what they're going after. What exactly that entails, I'm unsure.
They're just trying to find things that are going to make the fact that he's guilty a little bit more murky, and hopefully he'll get off. I've always thought the Innocence Project was a wonderful thing. I'm personally disgusted by this. If this is really what they're doing, I'm disgusted by it. You people should be ashamed of yourselves. I'm
just going to flat out say it. He did it.
And it sounds like they're even saying he probably did it, but we just don't like the way his trial was conducted. Exactly. How stupid is that?
Well, he's a high-profile guy, maybe trying to get themselves out there a little bit more.
I don't know who funds the Innocence Project, but that is not where money should be spent. It should be spent on the people who are truly innocent. Or at least you can prove, or hopefully prove, that they're truly innocent, but not on people that you can't prove are innocent, but, you just kind of want to buck the system. That's a bunch of BS.
Mm-hmm. Like I said, he's high-profile. And they're not trying to prove he's innocent, just that how he was found guilty wasn't done correctly.
Seriously hate all the bureaucracy and red tape sometimes. It irritates me to no end.
This is why justice is blind.
Blind, deaf, and dumb. All right.
So what do we got going on this episode?
Well, this episode, we are going to be talking about Halloween. Everybody knows Halloween, right? Mm-hmm. But how many of us celebrate Halloween without having really a clue as to why we do, or where it even came from?
Yes, that's me raising my hand. I only have an inkling of possibly where it came from. And yes, it's from the movie Hocus Pocus.
which I couldn't tell you what that was about. So I have no idea what you're talking about.
You're judging me. I just know you're over there behind that mic judging me.
I'm like, if this is where you get your education, I am being a little judgy. You're absolutely right.
Well, we'll see.
Okay, so who started the tradition of going to complete strangers' homes, even that freaky weird neighbor that nobody really talks to, and demand candy by saying, trick or treat? And what exactly does the trick part mean? You know, honestly, I did wonder what the trick part meant my whole life, and I never had it answered until today.
And the idea of the pressure of trying to plan a trick when you had no idea what it is.
Exactly. I mean, are you supposed to pull a quarter out of your ear?
Right.
Nobody knows.
Throw an egg at him. What is it?
Throw an egg is a trick.
I wasn't thinking magic. I was thinking vicious.
Lord have mercy. Thank goodness you only asked for candy.
Thank goodness they gave it to me.
Right? And what's with all the costumes that have become more and more elaborate? Is this holiday still just for kids, or is it also now for adults? How did Halloween impact the drag community? As time goes on, as far as who this holiday is really for, the lines are getting more and more blurred. But regardless, this hair-raising, creepy, fun night has become one of America's favorite days to celebrate.
I know this is the favorite for my daughter. She absolutely loves this. She loves to decorate her house, the whole nine.
I love it too. We did that when I was a kid, and then we kind of stopped doing that for a while, but I'm back to doing it and I'm all in. As a kid, I really loved Halloween. Everyone made their costumes when we were kids. I'm sure your mom made some of yours, Blondie, because she was so talented with sewing. Did you have any favorites that you remember?
I do. She did make all of my costumes, mine, my daughter's, and she made costumes for herself to wear to work. But one of my favorites is she made me the outfit from I Dream of Jeannie for my birthday party.
Ooh.
Right? My birthday is 3 days before Halloween, so I had plenty of Halloween birthday parties. But my favorite, as far as she was concerned, she made herself a full body kangaroo costume. I mean, full padded and everything.
You know what's funny? I would have never remembered. I think I've seen a picture of your mom in that. And it was like big tail, right? The whole thing?
Exactly. The whole everything.
I think I've seen that picture of her. I didn't have any idea she made that costume because it was amazing.
Yes, she did.
Wow.
The woman knew how to sew. I will give her that.
She definitely did. Wow. That's a great memory. So I have a favorite as well. When I was 7 years old, my mom, also talented with a sewing machine, made me a super tight, I don't know why it had to be so tight, royal blue satin mermaid style dress with a white ruffle around the neckline and a big old matching hat. And yeah, I was a second grader dressed as Mae West. For those of you who don't know who Mae West is, she was a movie star sex symbol in the mid 1900s. You know, and she was never like vulgar that I know of, but she was pretty risque for the time. She was fierce. Her famous one-liner while she was being flirtatious and puffing on her signature long cigarette holder was, "When I'm good, I'm very good, but when I'm bad, I'm better." I did my best for her voice. So whose idea was it? And yes, I even had the cigarette holder to make tiny me a sexy Mae West.
So whose idea was it?
I was 7, so I'm pretty sure it wasn't mine. It was a beautiful dress. It was very mature. You know how we are when we're young. We want to be old.
Mm-hmm.
But I could barely walk in it because the bottom was like too tight around my calf area. My mom gave me no stride room. It was all about being tight. But people laughed, and I think I got more candy that year. So as Mae West would say, it's better to be looked over than to be overlooked.
She was definitely the OG bougie personality with an attitude.
Oh, yeah. She was like a man-eater for her time.
Maybe it was so tight so that you couldn't get to all the houses. I have visions of you waddling.
I couldn't get up a curve. Like I had to be helped up the curb. I remember that because it was like, oh God, another curb.
You got to aim for the driveways.
But yeah, it was interesting. It's a good memory.
Well, good. It sounds fun.
Halloween is kind of a monster mash of some of the practices of old folklore with big time money making grabs. People are incorporating things to make this day bigger, better, and more interactive than before. In fact, according to recent data, last year, total expenditures hit a record high of $12.2 billion. And that's up 15.1% from 2022's $10.6 billion.
Okay, that's crazy. So I'm getting the impression between Halloween, Christmas, and 4th of July, that money could probably solve the U.S. national debt.
Seriously. I know I spent a little money the last couple of years, but that's a lot of money.
That is a lot of money.
It's pretty safe to assume that this amount of money being spent is not due to the previous association with religion. But does that mean it's mainly due to the influence of horror movies that Hollywood has turned into big profits? In America, yes. The horror movies have had a huge impact on the overall excitement of Halloween. Most people are just excited at the thought of getting to dress up for one night and be whoever you want to be, and more importantly, do whatever you want to do while disguised. If you tend to run pretty vanilla the rest of the year, Halloween is your once-a-year opportunity to show people you're cute, gorgeous, daring, devilishly handsome, or what many people nowadays are opting for, dangerous, deranged, or getting all that sexy naughtiness out that you've been burying all year. I'm always entertained by what people decide to be, especially at work, where we're required to be a particular way.
Mm-hmm.
You see the nice girls lose all their inhibitions and go real bad real quick. And shy, decent guys reveal a sometimes frightening alter ego. I'm sure it's very liberating for them.
I'm sure. And me as being a wallflower type person.
What?
Work with me.
Wait, is that your costume, being a wallflower?
No, my inner wallflower.
Okay. You act like you're talking to somebody who don't know you. Get it together, girl.
Anyway, I have gotten a little crazy a Halloween time or two. Shut up. Do you remember when we were living together and I don't even know what my costume was supposed to be? I want to say some type of showgirl where I had the top half from my waist up was like a tux. And from the waist down, I was in nylons, heels, and like a bathing suit type bottom thing. Do you remember that?
We have a picture of that.
And we do.
And I don't know what we were both thinking. I have I want to say it's a Betty Boop tank top on and a tight skirt and white face. I have no idea who or what I was trying to be. We both look crazy.
And our hair could not have been any bigger.
Big old hair. We should post that picture because it's a good picture.
I have it somewhere. We were sitting on our neighbor's couch.
All right. We'll get back to you guys on that one.
I just found it.
Are we putting it up?
What the heck? And we're holding bottles of wine.
Who are we?
I don't know.
All right. Well, we'll talk about putting that one up. So why are responsible parents who would never let their children take candy from a stranger compelled to let them do exactly that for one questionable evening? What is so special about that purposefully scary night that all of a sudden strangers can do us no harm? Or can they? Rumors have circulated for decades about crazed hippies or neighborhood occultists tampering with children's candy and even going so far as putting razor blades in apples or dirty needles in candy bars. But what started out as just urban legend for many years became reality as time went on. Some of these cases include Toronto in 1968, where police found razor blades in apples. Cambridge, Ontario in 2017, where an 11-year-old girl required surgery after eating a Reese's peanut butter cup with a metal sharp object inside. Eugene, Oregon in 2022, where police found multiple razor blades similar to pencil sharpener blades hidden in children's candy, and a case in Connecticut where a man was arrested after trick-or-treaters found razor blades in their candy. So funny how before it was hippies and Satanists, but as we know nowadays, it's mainly normal looking people who are the true crazies.
Like you said, normal looking on the outside. Inside is another story. And I think the more of these episodes we do, the more we're starting to realize that.
Yeah, I think I knew that before, but this is definitely confirming it. So these cases were a real buzzkill for Halloween night because we used to eat the candy as fuel to run to more houses to get more candy. Remember that?
I remember.
We're all hyped up. But now the new rule was do not eat any candy until your parents check every single piece. Well, that really sucked because now I'm totally lethargic from not eating dinner because obviously I needed to save room for candy. And without my on-the-road candy fix, I don't have the energy to run, which means I have to walk. And that equals less houses. Come on, work with me here, people.
I do remember eating dinner, though, on Halloween and watching it get darker and darker. And then what was really messed up was if a trick-or-treater came to the door and I was still eating. That was it. All the candy was going to be gone by the time I got out there.
Of course it was.
And remember, you had to hide your wrappers of things you ate because you couldn't bring them home?
Right. Had to get super creative. After trick-or-treating, now you get to your own house and dump out all your candy for your mom to look it over. Like she really had a clue what to look for. Clean candy went in one pile and questionable candy in another. I remember most of the questionable candy was the good stuff, like, the chocolate bars.
Mm-hmm.
And my suddenly overly protective mom would just take the offending chocolate bars away to, save my life. Later, cut to my mom with a full-on chocolate mustache.
I can totally see your mom doing that.
Oh, she did.
Wasn't there a time, though, that you could take your candy to, like, the hospital or the fire department to have it x-rayed?
There was. I don't know if they do that anymore, but yeah, there definitely was.
Times have changed.
On a side note, when my kids were little, I made a rule because I hated the idea of them eating candy for days or weeks. So the rule was they could eat as much candy as they wanted to for 3 days. All night, all day, doesn't matter, but only for 3 days. Anything left over would go straight to the office to be shared in my candy jar. I felt like 3 days would be much less damaging. Anything more than that was just looking for trouble. My kids still remember that and we laugh about it. It's a fun memory.
I mean, that's quite a haul if they could eat whatever they could for 3 days and plus have leftover for you to take to the office. Were they like kind of over candy after the third day?
Yeah, they kind of were. It wasn't such a big sacrifice because they were all candied out. So
Makes sense.
And let's not forget all the huge Halloween parties, extravagant haunted houses. Those are my favorite. Festivals that include hay rides and haunted pathways. There's quite a bit of effort going into this night of pranking. And most of the effort is mainly to scare people, mostly children. And their parents are right there watching it happen and enjoying every minute of it. And some of those parents shamelessly wearing their chocolate mustaches.
Oh, and let's not forget the haunted mazes that I refuse to go to, but that you drag me to once in a while. Oh, and not Scary Farm. I'm that person that spent the night either screaming, jumping, or constantly spinning around because they always seem to sneak up on you.
I love Not Scary Farm, and they are everywhere jumping out over there. It is so much fun. One year, hubby and I just sat like on a curb, and we went and spent most of the night just watching other people get scared. It was hilarious.
So you're the parent sitting there watching other people get scared with your chocolate mustaches?
It was just my husband and I, no kids involved. So we really got into it. And we sat there, we would see the people coming, and we knew where like the scare zone was. And we'd see the people just walking and talking, be like, oh, this is going to be a good one.
You guys are mean.
It was so much fun. It's like for one day of the year, America becomes Bizarro Upside Down Day. But those who celebrate Halloween would say it's one of the best times they've ever had, and they can't wait to do it all again next year. It's a huge deal, regardless of the commercialism. But if you ask most people what they're celebrating, they have no clue. It's just a lot of fun. We usually find that people assume because there's a scary element involved with Halloween that the day glorifies some type of Satanism or dark magic. And with all the dressing up as monsters, ghosts, witches, and devils, you can't blame them. And speak of the devil, literally, did you know that historically the devil used to be depicted as blue?
I did not. See, now I have my one thing I learned today.
I didn't know that either. But because of red being associated with sin, fire, and danger, newer artist depictions have Satan portrayed more like a demon in hell rather than the fallen angel of light. The red skin, horns, and tail are all a manifestation of what the world sees as evil, and it also makes the devil easily recognizable for storytelling. But there are also Christians who think it's perfectly fine to celebrate Halloween. It's just a dress up and get candy event. No harm, no foul. It's what they grew up with and enjoyed. There are even a lot of churches that will celebrate on the evening of Halloween, but relabel the event as a harvest festival. But it's pretty much the same types of activities minus the scary stuff. This also becomes a community outreach, and churches usually are able to recruit more families to attend their services following a harvest celebration. As much power as the church has throughout the world, big businesses also have a lot of pull. And this includes big candy manufacturers. Money talks, as we all know. And during this time of the year, candy manufacturers make such an outrageous amount of money that they call Halloween their Super Bowl. In fact, candy companies even tried to get daylight savings time moved up to November so that they could have an extra hour of daylight for kids to trick or treat and for people to have to pass out candy. Geez, that's pretty extreme. But can you imagine how much more money that would be for them?
And the pressure to actually go out and buy the candy. But now it actually is moved up to November?
It is now, but it used to be the last Sunday in October. Halloween candy and merchandise used to come out 30 to 60 days prior, but now stores are starting to put products out in mid-summer. I think this is pretty ridiculous, and this applies to Christmas too. I don't need Christmas in July. Everything should have its own special time of the year that coordinates with the climate, the scents in the air, and all the good feels that go with it. Otherwise, everything is just going to be all year long and nothing special about it. Convenience and greed are massacring our traditions, and quite frankly, I'm over it.
I agree with you. And I do love that cartoon that I saw where a Santa is creeping into November and a turkey yells at him and points his little feather finger and says, "Back off, fat boy, wait your turn."
That's perfect. Absolutely perfect. So let's explore the history of Halloween. Where did it all come from and why? After doing some research, there are still some gray areas, but we're reporting history and some interesting facts. So let's just have fun with it, which is exactly what I think the very commercialized Halloween we celebrate today amounts to. 'Tis the night of the grave's delight. So let's dig deep and get to the beginning of it all. Let's let the grim begin. Halloween is said to have evolved over 2,000 years ago from a 3-day fire pagan religious festival celebrated by Celtic Ireland called Samhain. Samhain symbolizes death and rebirth. They celebrated the death of summer because they believed the sun was dying and would be reborn in the spring. This is symbolized by the classic black color. The birth of the autumn harvest season is symbolized by the classic orange color. So technically, these two classic colors we still use today represent a transfer of seasons. I think it's so interesting to think that people thought the sun died.
And why would they think the sun died?
I guess because it really dims for the autumn and winter.
Maybe.
Special bonfires were lit, which were deemed to have protective and cleansing powers. The dead were also celebrated. Families would make offerings to try to get their recently deceased loved ones to rejoin the living. The Celts believed that October 31st was the day when the living and the dead overlapped. The veil between the two realms was at its thinnest, and the dead could pass through and return to earth. But while celebrating their loved ones, evil spirits could also return and do them harm. So, fearing the evil spirits, the festival goers would wear costumes and masks to help hide from the unfriendly spirits. This was important because those without costumes could be possessed by the visiting dead. It was also a popular night for pranks since people were disguised, and those pranks or tricks were usually blamed on mischievous spirits. You know, who knew we were wearing costumes to ward off evil spirits, especially since most of our costumes today are evil spirits?
The irony.
It's like, I don't want the devil to come at me, but I'm a devil.
Which are you?
Exactly. Catholics came in and wanted to Christianize the area, but realizing that the Celts did not want to give up their Samhain celebration, unasked, they decided to incorporate the pagan holiday into one of their own in order to fit their Christian beliefs and still be able to convert the Celts. So the Catholic Church incorporated bits of Samhain in with their All Saints' Day, aka All Hallows' Day, on November 1st. But this day honors and celebrates Christian saints and martyrs only. The night before was known as All Hallows' Eve in Scotland, and that eventually became Halloween. So that was pretty gangsta of the Catholic Church, because with just a little wink in their eye, they were like, nah, my boy, your centuries-old religious pagan festival ain't going to work for us. So we'll just move some stuff around, and poof, Samhain is now renamed and officially Christian. You're welcome. The Celts never saw it coming. So I personally think that's definitely the first real trick for Halloween.
Well, that is impressive. And poof, it's all changed.
Right.
And that is the one thing in Hocus Pocus that I remembered they called Halloween All Hallows' Eve. So see, there was a little truth.
You really need to upgrade your resources for education, though. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
I'm just saying they got it right.
Okie doke. In 1556, there was a long-established tradition of special foods served during the Halloween season to honor the dead. One of the favorites was soul cake. These cakes were named soul cakes because poor children would go house to house and sing and say prayers for the souls of the homeowner's deceased relatives. Then they'd be rewarded with a dense cake that was filled with fruit and spices, known as soul cakes. This is where trick-or-treating begins. I would not like people asking me about my dead relatives so that they can get a cake. I'd be like, just give them the cake and be done with it.
And they gave him fruitcake on top of it.
Yeah.
Really?
I know, right?
Ew.
Maybe that's why we can't get rid of fruitcake. It's been around forever.
And that's why it does last forever.
Well, and I do think if anyone gets fruitcake, they should pray.
Maybe they need a doorstop or something.
In the 1600s, Halloween was banned by the Puritans in England when they broke with the Roman Catholic Church because the Puritans considered it a Catholic holiday, which it absolutely was since they had stolen it from the Celts. So for the next 200 years, Halloween is celebrated by just Catholics and Episcopalians. But in more remote areas like Scotland and parts of Ireland, this tradition was kept alive.
They do like to party.
Yes, they do. Then in the late 1800s, when the Irish and Scottish immigrants fleeing the Irish potato famine arrived in America, they brought their Halloween holiday traditions. Turnips were carved in their countries as they were readily available. But when this celebration was brought to the United States, turnips were replaced by pumpkins because they were native to America, bigger, and much easier to carve. This is when Halloween became quite popular in America.
That is interesting. I mean, they actually have people that are pumpkin carvers for hobbies and make a living at it.
Oh, pumpkin carving today is something to see. In 1880, George Renninger, an employee at Wonderly Candy Company in Philadelphia, invented a revolutionary tricolored candy treat that became a widespread phenomenon. Then in 1898, another company, the Golitz Candy Company, now known as the Jelly Belly Candy Company, bought the candy recipe and popularized it under the cutesy name Chicken Feed. Because even though it was definitely not for chickens, it was shaped like corn kernels, and corn was not considered an edible food for people. It was mainly used for animals at that time. Therefore, candy corn, aka chicken feed, was sold to children in boxes with the slogan, "Something worth crowing for."
Okay, then.
First off, I never knew that candy corn had another name. Secondly, I also didn't know there was a time that corn was not considered edible for people. Interesting, right?
Yeah, I didn't know that either. I love corn.
Me too. I thought it'd been around forever. I mean, maybe it's because we live here and we know the Native Americans used it for stuff, but this is interesting.
Look at you with a little history lesson.
Well, I mean, that's why I'm like, corn's been around forever. Some people love candy corn and some people hate it, but it's a Halloween staple for me. I gotta have it. If not, it would be like Thanksgiving without cranberries. Blasphemy.
Oh my gosh. We actually agree on a food. I love those little waxy candy corn treats, especially since they changed them and they do the tops that are chocolate now. Love those.
Oh, okay, we were on the same page until you said chocolate tops. I do not like it when people mess with an original recipe. Just leave the candy corn the way it was. It's delicious. It's vanilla and it's delicious. Stop jacking it up.
Well, I'm just saying.
In 1921, the first official Halloween celebration was held in Annika, Minnesota. And it must have been quite the party in Raise the Roof, because over the next several years, many other cities followed suit with their own celebrations and town-wide Halloween parades. Check out Minnesota being the wizards of Halloween. No offense, but with those freezing temperatures, Minnesota would have not been my first guess.
And I'm sure they're not wearing those sexy little nurse costumes and Tarzan costumes in Minnesota in October.
Catwoman.
Right. I'm thinking more polar bears.
They're wearing your mom's kangaroo costume.
They're carrying their children in the pocket to keep them warm.
Right. Everybody snuggled up. Oh my God. I love your mom. Amazing.
She was something.
By the 1930s, Halloween was becoming so popular, costumes were being mass manufactured, and it's now a legit money-making celebration. The slip-over costume was the most popular because it was so simple and inexpensive to make. But as costumes became more popular, there were lots of issues with costumes that were racist. In the 1930s, racism was prevalent and ethnic costumes were not viewed as a problem among the white community. Painted brown, black, red, and yellow faces were also becoming a problem. It quickly became apparent that Halloween had to be sanitized from this way of thinking in order to keep its popularity going. In 1937, new cartoon character costumes came about. Children wanted to dress up as the characters they were familiar with. Walt Disney was even approached by costume companies after Snow White came out that year, and a Disney-filled catalog was introduced for children's costumes. Also by this time, the classic movie monsters began to become popular with Nosferatu, Dracula, and eventually Wolfman and Frankenstein. Now we're talking. Every kid had to be one of these monsters at least once in their life.
I will confess, I was a vampire once. Mom made, but I was a vampire.
I was definitely a Dracula at least once, maybe twice, and I was a Frankenstein.
Really? Interesting.
Some people might say I still am.
Only in the morning.
Only before coffee. In the 1950s and 60s, most families now had television sets, so children veered toward cowboys, clowns, rock stars, hippies, policemen, firemen, doctors, and Batman, of course.
What about Wonder Woman?
No, didn't come up.
Hmm.
What kid's going to pull off that body? I mean, come on.
I mean, weren't you a 7-year-old in a in a Mae West costume?
That's true. I'd probably be the only kid that could pull it off because I had experience.
That's right.
It wasn't until the 1970s that costumes began to become more risque. Halloween became popular for an evening of festive cross-dressing. It was the one night a year that gay and trans people could publicly express their true identity. In San Francisco, there were laws in place that made it illegal to pose as a member of the opposite sex, which is why on Halloween, people wore over-the-top drag. If you were caught by local police, it had to be obvious that you were just a regular dude messing around in costume and not trying to be a cross-dresser, or you could be arrested for legitimate attempts at identity fraud.
Wow.
Crazy, right?
Yes.
This sexy revolution and changing ideals of modesty and fashion led many more people to experiment with sexy costuming. You know, I love that even during this time of such ignorance, and even with the fear of being arrested, gays and trans still took a risk and found a loophole to express themselves.
Hey, they made it work.
They always do. They're a very tenacious people.
Mm-hmm.
I admire that. And now we get to 1978. This is the year that changed everything. Halloween, the first slasher movie of its kind in the horror movie franchise, was released, and pure evil Michael Myers is introduced to the world. And boy, what an introduction. Overnight, Michael Myers is in every teenager's nightmares, and he wants to kill all of them. Did you know that he wears a Captain Kirk mask that is painted white?
No.
I didn't know that either. I had no idea that's whose face it was, and that just makes it even more scary. He also murders using a chef's knife. Though he has no real face, he's now the face of the boogeyman. Following this, a whole new line of boogeymen was created. Freddy Krueger, Jason, and so on. Yep, these guys are way creepier and more depraved than the original monsters of the early 1900s.
Yeah, they were a little nuts.
Yeah, pretty wild. Here's some interesting Halloween lore. Did you know that if a spider falls into a candle and is consumed by the flame, that means a witch is nearby? Could be that slightly green, wart-nosed coworker who hates you.
That creepy crawly one?
And speaking of spiders, if you see one, then a deceased loved one is watching over you. So this one sucks because I see spiders all the time and I don't want my loved ones to see what I'm doing all the time. Grandma might be a little taken aback.
A little. Grandma would be shocked.
She'd have to die all over again.
That's right. Not only that, how many have you killed in your lifetime? Talk about double trauma.
I haven't killed that many. Maybe as a kid I killed some, but as an adult I don't kill spiders. I love them.
You were in charge of spiders. I was in charge of crunchies.
Yeah, I only killed them because you were scared of them, but I like spiders. Spiders are our friends. In the Middle Ages, cats were associated with the devil. And to back that up, accused witches were often found to own cats, especially black ones. Well, knowing how inaccurate they were about these supposed witches, that whole black cat thing should have went out the window a long time ago. Black cats are beautiful.
They are so shiny.
Right? And their eyes are usually that beautiful green color.
I don't know how a different color cat can rain any more horrific things than a regular cat.
I take it you're not a cat fan.
Hello, Reba.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Your cat Reba that gave me worms. Or was it worms? She gave me ringworm.
I was going to say, if you got worms, you got those on your own.
No.
She gave you ringworm.
She gave me
ringworm too.
She gave me ringworm. She used to crawl in bed with me and hide under the covers.
She was a little orange kitten. And of course, I had to name her Reba.
You're weird.
Bats were labeled as messengers of Satan. Puritans believed that if a bat flew near them, someone was trying to bewitch them. Geez, bats and cats really got a bad rap for absolutely no reason.
Sounds like it.
And contrary to popular belief, bats are not blind. You know, the whole blind as a bat?
Mm-hmm.
They have great eyesight, echolocation, and can also see at night. So now when someone says, "You're blind as a bat," you should appropriately say, "Aw, well, aren't you the sweetest?"
Thanks for that little compliment.
Right?
And I'm thinking they make great GPSs.
They would. Side note, the Chinese believe that the bat is a symbol of happiness. But now, following the coronavirus, bats have been blamed for a global pandemic. I wonder if the Chinese have changed their beliefs now.
I don't think so. I think that it's still happy, but just happiness for the pharmaceutical companies.
Right? They got so rich. Thank you, bats.
All right.
There are vampire bats, and no, they don't live off of human blood. They're more like mosquitoes, and they need blood mainly from animals to survive, but they don't kill their victims. They just need a couple of gulps. And did you know that a group of bats is called a colony or a cauldron? Yep, a cauldron, like the big witch brewing pot. So that's kind of weird, but cool.
Mm-hmm.
Chocolate used to dominate at Halloween, but then hard candies came in and became popular because they lasted longer. Then chewy stuff like Skittles, Starburst, and Laffy Taffy took over for a minute. I absolutely love Laffy Taffy to this day. And yeah, I even quote the jokes. No shame to my game.
Well, personally, if you're going to go chewy, I will take caramel, particularly the sea salt caramel, over chocolate any day.
That is good.
Oh, God, so good.
But at this time, the top selling candies for Halloween are M&M's, Reese's Peanut Butter Cups, Sour Patch Kids, Skittles, Starburst, and the oh-so-controversial candy corn. So because Snickers was obviously missing from this list, I looked it up, and it is the number one selling candy in America throughout the entire year, but somehow not at Halloween. Weird, right?
Wow, who would have thunk?
I know. It's like, that's very bizarre. River Phoenix, a very famous young actor from the 80s and 90s, died at 23 years old on the eve of Halloween. After visiting the Viper Room on Sunset Boulevard in LA, and at that time owned by Johnny Depp. One of his drug dealer friends offered him a hit of heroin that was pure grade Persian brown. Right after snorting it, he began shaking violently and then vomited. So another so-called friend gave him a Valium to calm him down. After taking the Valium, he said he couldn't breathe, and then he passed out. He finally went outside and fell down into seizures on the sidewalk. River went into a full cardiac arrest, and after arriving at the hospital, he was pronounced dead. Johnny Depp closed the club every year on Halloween in honor of River's death until 2004, when he sold his shares of the club.
Well, I remember that. I remember when River Phoenix died, and I had no idea other than it was a drug overdose. And I also didn't know about Johnny Depp and closing it on Halloween.
I knew exactly what you knew. I just knew he died outside of the Viper Room.
On the sidewalk?
On the sidewalk, and it just was really sad.
Wow.
The famous magician, Harry Houdini, died on Halloween after claiming that he could take a punch in the stomach from anyone without any harm to his body. So a college kid punched him as hard as he could and ruptured Houdini's appendix. He was only 52 years old when he passed. But technically, Houdini caused his own death, and I actually feel sorry for the kid who punched him.
I do too. I couldn't imagine living with that.
Me neither. Sean Connery, a famous Scottish actor, died of pneumonia in his sleep at the age of 90 on Halloween in 2020.
Another something I didn't know.
Yep. Every time I hear the name Sean Connery, I think of the movie The Pest with John Leguizamo. And they brought up Sean Connery's name. And every time they did, there was like a Scottish band. Mm-hmm. And they would say Sean Connery's name, and they would go, "Sean Connery's birthday." And they'd start playing the birthday song. It was so goofy. But every time I hear Sean Connery, I hear Sean Connery's birthday. Da 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 da. so funny.
All right, weirdo.
I know. It's just every time. So it happened this time too. It was rumored that Anton LaVey, the founder of the Church of Satan, also died on Halloween, but he actually died 2 days prior after battling pulmonary edema. His death certificate was falsified to reflect that he died on Halloween. I guess they were trying to keep it creepy. But why are we surprised his peeps lied about his death? They're Satanists, for goodness sake.
And I didn't know the name until you said the founder of the Church of Satan.
Yeah. He's the founder of the Church of Satan, and I actually have referred to him before in our Richard Ramirez episodes. Because Richard Ramirez, during all of his killing spree, made a couple of trips up to, I think it was the San Francisco area, to go to Anton LaVey's church. And he actually met with him and they had church together. There was sacrifices and all kinds of stuff. This also got into Richard Ramirez's head and messed him up real good.
That's right.
So he was a legit Satanist.
Who didn't die on Halloween.
They tried to make it sound like he did, but he did not. In 2010, in Belleville, Illinois, they made it illegal to trick or treat if you're older than 12 years old. And if they catch those 13-year-old greedy bastards, there's a fine of up to $1,000.
Oh my gosh.
I kind of think that's a good thing because the bigger kids sometimes ruin it for the younger ones. But it made me wonder if it's like when you go to Disneyland and in order to get them in for free, they claim that their big old 5-year-old kid is only 2. You know, they're just really big for their age.
I've seen people attempt that.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't mind the older ones on Halloween, but I just limit the candy I give them. They already had their turn. Let the little ones have it.
Exactly. As Halloween becomes more and more popular throughout the years, it's evolving into bigger, better, and more sophisticated events. It's had more of an impact on history than I ever realized. Some good things and some not so good things, depending on what side you're on. But I'll sum it up with another great Mae West quote. When caught between two evils, I generally pick the one I've never tried before. Halloween continues to flourish and is definitely here to stay. But don't worry, it's all just a bunch of hocus pocus, right? Or is it?
Oh, look at you quoting Hocus Pocus.
Is that a quote from Hocus Pocus?
Yes. Wow, I learned a lot that I had no idea about.
Me too.
Well, thank you for bringing us that, I don't want to say scary because it really wasn't scary, that informative story. A lot of great stuff in there.
I enjoyed putting that one together.
We want to thank everybody for listening on this
Spookterfest.
There she goes. Don't forget to take care and remember to let your grimaginations run wild. Bye.
Goodbye, everybody.
We just want to thank you all for sharing your time with us. And if you'd like to send in your creepy little grim bits, we would love to hear your personal stories, interests, and suggestions. Please email them to grimwitwithdimwits@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at grimwitwithdimwits, X at grimwitwithdimwits, Facebook grimwitwithdimwits, and YouTube grimwitwithdimwits. Join us every Monday for new episodes, and feel free to share us with your grim-loving friends.
We would really appreciate if you would take a minute to rate and review. 5-star ratings go a long way and would really help us out. Until then, we would love it if you'd come back next week to delve with us into the strange and unusual things we just can't wrap our skulls around.